Dr. Kira Vex sat in her laboratory late at night, staring at the data crystal that would change everything. The soft blue glow from her computer screens cast strange shadows across her crystalline features as she reviewed her findings one more time. She had spent 3 years analyzing genetic samples from across the galaxy, and what she discovered made her stomach turn with horror. The pattern was unmistakable. Every few hundred years, entire species simply vanished from galactic records. The official reports always claimed natural disasters, disease outbreaks, or evolutionary dead ends. But Kira's genetic analysis told a different story. These species had been healthy, thriving, and actively evolving when they disappeared. Someone had been systematically removing them from existence. She traced her finger along the holographic timeline floating above her desk. The gentle builders of Proxima 7, masters of living architecture, gone after a solar flare that affected only their world. The song weavers of the Crystal Nebula, whose music could heal damaged minds, vanished during a civil war that left no survivors. The deep swimmers of Aquatica Prime, wiped out by a plague that somehow never spread to any other world. The more she investigated, the clearer the truth became. The galaxy's most powerful civilizations, including her own Thalorian Empire, had been quietly murdering anyone they considered inferior. They kept only species that served their purposes or posed no threat to their dominance. The rest were eliminated with careful precision, their deaths made to look natural or inevitable. Kira's hands shook as she prepared her report. This was the discovery of a lifetime, proof of crimes spanning millennia. The Thalorian Science Council would have to act on this evidence. They would demand justice for the countless murdered civilizations. They would expose this conspiracy and ensure it never happened again. She was wrong. When Kira presented her findings to the council the next morning, she expected shock, outrage, demands for immediate action. Instead, she found cold silence and calculating stares. Council Chairman Vorth listened to her complete presentation without interruption, his ancient eyes never leaving her face. "These are serious accusations, Dr. Vex," he said when she finished. "Very serious indeed." "Yes, Chairman. The evidence is overwhelming. We must contact the Galactic Assembly immediately and dash." "What we must do," Vorth interrupted, his voice sharp as broken glass, "is discuss your future in the Empire." The trial lasted exactly 1 day. They charged her with spreading dangerous misinformation, conducting unauthorized research, and possessing materials that threatened galactic stability. The evidence she had gathered was declared classified and sealed. Her decades of loyal service meant nothing. Her brilliant scientific record was erased from all databases. "Dr. Kira Vex," the judge announced, "you are found guilty of crimes against the natural order. Your citizenship is revoked. Your name is struck from all records. You will be transported to the Outer Rim territories and released. The Empire considers you dead." They gave her 1 hour to gather personal belongings. Security guards watched as she packed a small bag with basic supplies and her research notes, carefully hidden in false compartments. Her colleagues avoided eye contact as she walked through the halls one final time. The laboratory where she had spent her best years was already being prepared for her replacement. The transport ship was a cargo hauler, cramped and dirty. Kira shared space with broken machinery and spoiled food containers. The crew treated her like dangerous cargo, providing minimal food and water for the week-long journey. She spent her time reviewing what data she had managed to save, committing every detail to memory. Station Omega 7 appeared on the view screen like a dying star, its hull scarred and patched with obvious emergency repairs. Half the docking lights were dark, and the whole structure listed slightly to one side. This was where the Empire sent people to disappear quietly. "End of the line," the transport captain announced. "Station's got maybe 6 months of life support left if the recyclers don't fail first. Good luck." They dumped her belongings onto the station platform and undocked immediately, leaving Kira alone in the vast emptiness of space. The station's artificial intelligence welcomed her with a mechanical voice that couldn't hide the failing systems beneath its polite words. Her assigned quarters were tiny but clean, with basic furniture and a small work area. The walls were thin enough that she could hear the station's labored breathing as their recyclers struggled to maintain atmosphere. Every few hours, the lights dimmed as power fluctuated through aging circuits. The station computer informed her that she was the only resident. Previous exiles had either died or somehow found transport off-station, though records were unclear about which fate was more common. Supply ships came irregularly, and the next one wasn't scheduled for 4 months. Kira set up her research materials in the work area and began recording everything she knew about the galactic conspiracy. If she was going to die here, at least her knowledge might survive. Someone somewhere, might find her records and continue the fight for truth. As days turned into weeks, she watched the station's systems slowly fail around her. The oxygen recyclers ran at 60% efficiency. The food processors produced increasingly bitter meals. The communication array had been offline for years. She was meant to die here, forgotten and silenced, another victim of the galaxy's hidden war against the weak. Captain Lee Minho floated quietly in the observation deck of his ship, watching the stars drift past like distant memories. The New Dawn was 3 days into their sweep of the Outer Rim territories, searching for salvage and forgotten technology that might help their small colony survive another year. These missions usually turned up nothing but space junk and broken dreams. "Captain," came a voice through the comm system. Navigator Park Sabin sounded unusually alert for this time of shift. "We have something strange on long-range sensors. There's a station out here that shouldn't exist." Minho pushed off from the viewing port and floated toward the bridge. His crew was small but experienced, all of them refugees from Earth's diaspora who had learned to make their living in the galaxy's forgotten corners. They had been flying together for 5 years, long enough to trust each other's instincts completely. "Show me," he said, settling into his captain's chair and activating the holographic display. Station Omega-7 appeared as a wireframe outline, spinning slowly in the darkness. The structure was clearly old, probably dating back to the early expansion period. Most of its hull showed signs of emergency repairs and jury-rigged modifications. Half the docking ports were sealed or damaged. "Life support is failing," reported Chief Engineer Choi Hyun-woo from his station. "Power output is less than 30% of normal. Atmosphere is breathable but thin. And Captain, there's someone alive on that station." The sensor data flickered across Minho's screen. One life sign, weak but steady, located in what appeared to be the residential section. The readings were strange though, not quite human but definitely sentient. "Alien?" asked Medical Officer Kim Yuna, already moving toward her equipment locker. "Looks like it. Crystalline biology, if I'm reading this correctly." Hyun-woo frowned at his instruments. "Never seen anything quite like it in our databases. Most salvage crews would log the contact and move on. Aliens were trouble, especially unknown species in uncharted space. The galaxy was full of territorial governments that didn't appreciate unauthorized contact with their citizens. Getting involved with stranded aliens was a quick way to end up in an imperial prison. But Minho remembered his grandmother's stories about the journey from Earth, how strangers had shared food and fuel when his people had nothing to offer in return. His parents had taught him that helping others wasn't about profit or politics. It was simply the right thing to do. "Dock us," he ordered. "Captain," Sabin said carefully, "we don't know what we're dealing with here. Could be dangerous. Could be someone who needs help," Minho replied. "Yuna, get your medical kit ready. Hyun-woo, bring cutting tools in case we need to get through locked doors. Everyone else, standard first contact protocols." The docking procedure took almost an hour. The station's automated systems were barely functional, and several docking clamps failed to engage properly. When they finally made it aboard, the corridors were cold and dimly lit, filled with the sounds of failing machinery and recycled air that tasted stale and metallic. They found her collapsed in what had once been a laboratory. The alien lay unconscious near a work table covered with data crystals and research equipment. Her skin had a translucent quality that reminded Minho of carved jade, and she breathed with a rhythm different from humans but clearly alive. "She's badly dehydrated," Yuna reported, running her scanner over the alien's body. "Malnutrition too. Looks like she's been here for weeks with minimal food and water." "Can you treat her?" Minho asked. Yuna was already unpacking her medical supplies. "I think so. The physiology is different but not completely alien. Give me some time to adapt the equipment." While Yuna worked to stabilize their unexpected patient, the rest of the crew explored the station. They found living quarters that had been carefully maintained despite the failing systems. The alien had been resourceful, using emergency power cells to keep essential systems running and rationing her supplies with mathematical precision. The laboratory was the most interesting discovery. Communications Officer Yang Jizu found data crystals containing what appeared to be extensive scientific research, though the language was unfamiliar. The work looked important, detailed enough to represent years of careful study. "She's a scientist," Jizu reported. "This equipment is sophisticated, probably more advanced than what we have. Whatever she was working on, she considered it important enough to keep running her experiments even while stranded." 3 days later, the alien opened her eyes in the New Dawn's medical bay. She looked around with obvious confusion, taking in the clean walls and functioning equipment. When she saw Yuna checking her monitors, she tried to sit up too quickly and immediately fell back with a groan. "Easy," Yuna said gently, pressing a hand to the alien's shoulder. "You're safe now. We found you on that station and brought you aboard our ship." The alien stared at her with large, dark eyes that seemed to hold too much knowledge and sadness. She spoke in a musical language that the ship's computer couldn't translate, then tried again in what sounded like several different tongues. Finally, she managed a few words in broken Galactic Standard. Why help me? I am nothing. I am exile." Minho had entered the medical bay in time to hear the question. He pulled up a chair beside the bed and sat down, meeting her gaze directly. "Because you needed help," he said simply. "That's reason enough." Kira woke up every morning expecting to find herself back on the dying station, but instead she opened her eyes to clean white walls and the gentle hum of properly functioning life support. The humans had given her a small cabin near the medical bay, complete with a work desk and access to their computer systems. After weeks of rationed water and failing air recyclers, the simple luxury of unlimited oxygen felt like a miracle. On her third day aboard the New Dawn, Engineer Choi Hyun-woo knocked on her door and invited her to see the ship's hydroponic gardens. Kira followed him through corridors that buzzed with activity, past crew members who nodded politely but didn't stare at her alien appearance. She had never experienced such casual acceptance from strangers. The garden took up an entire deck of the ship, a vast space filled with growing plants under artificial sunlight. The air smelled of earth and growing things, so different from the sterile recycled atmosphere she was used to. Rows of vegetables grew in carefully tended beds while fruit trees stretched toward the ceiling lights. "This is beautiful," Kira said, running her crystalline fingers along the leaves of a tomato plant. "But why do you grow so much food? There are only 12 crew members on this ship." Hyun-woo smiled and led her to a section where workers were packing vegetables into storage containers. "We supply food to refugee settlements throughout this sector. Many of the people living on the hidden worlds don't have the equipment or knowledge to grow their own crops yet." "Hidden worlds?" Kira asked. "Places where people go when they have nowhere else to turn. We help them get established, provide supplies until they can support themselves." Hyun-woo picked up a container of fresh carrots. "This batch is going to New Seoul, a settlement of human families who fled the core worlds. Next week we're delivering to Haven Point, where the Moss Singers are trying to rebuild their culture after their homeworld was destroyed." Kira stared at him. In her experience, advanced species helped others only when they gained something in return. Resources, territory, political advantage, scientific knowledge. But these humans seemed to give freely without expecting payment. "What do you get from this?" she asked. Hyun-woo looked confused by the question. "We get to help people who need help. That's enough." Later that afternoon, Communications Officer Yang Jizu offered to teach Kira more human languages. They sat in the ship's small library, surrounded by books and data tablets in dozens of different scripts. Jizu was patient and encouraging, using songs and stories to help Kira understand not just the words but the culture behind them. "This is a song my grandfather taught me," Jizu explained, playing a recording of a gentle melody with words about cooperation and mutual aid. "It's about people working together to build something better than what they had before. Many human cultures have similar songs." "Your people value cooperation over competition?" Kira asked. "Both have their place," Jizu replied. "But we've learned that cooperation builds stronger communities. When everyone contributes according to their abilities and receives according to their needs, everyone benefits." The concept was foreign to Kira's experience. In Thalorian society, strength dominated weakness as a natural law. The powerful took what they wanted, and the weak survived by serving or hiding. The idea that strength might voluntarily protect weakness seemed impossible. But everywhere she looked on the New Dawn, she saw evidence of this philosophy in action. The crew included not just humans but other species that the galaxy had forgotten or discarded. Kira met Moss Singer Trileko, whose people communicated through harmonic vibrations and whose homeworld had been sterilized by solar radiation 3 decades ago. She spoke with Unit 47, a mechanical being whose creators had been purged centuries earlier but who had found sanctuary among the humans. Most surprising was discovering 2 other Thalorians working in the ship's technical sections. Kira recognized them as political exiles, people who had spoken against the Empire's policies and been quietly disappeared. She expected them to avoid her, knowing that association with a convicted traitor could bring punishment. Instead, they welcomed her warmly and shared their own stories of escape and rescue by human crews. "I was scheduled for memory adjustment," explained Dr. Vexnuth, a former medical researcher. My crime was treating alien patients with the same care I gave to Thalorians. The humans found me in a detention center and offered me a new life. I refused to participate in a research mission that was actually a population elimination project, added Engineer Kethmore. The humans gave me meaningful work that helps people instead of harming them. Captain Minho often joined these conversations, listening more than speaking but always making sure everyone felt heard and valued. When Kira finally worked up the courage to offer her scientific knowledge in payment for her rescue, she expected negotiation or demands for exclusive access to her research. Instead, Minho politely declined any form of payment. Knowledge shared freely grows stronger, he explained. If your research can help people, then sharing it openly will help the most people possible. We don't rescue people for profit, Dr. Kira. We do it because leaving someone to die when we could save them would make us less than we want to be. Kira spent long hours staring out the observation windows, watching stars drift past while trying to understand what she was experiencing. These humans had created something she thought impossible, a society where moral strength mattered more than physical power, where helping strangers was considered normal rather than foolish. For the first time since her exile began, she felt something she had almost forgotten, hope that another way of living might actually be possible. The new dawn approached Haven Station 3 weeks after rescuing Kira, and she pressed her face to the observation window in amazement. The station was enormous, easily 10 times larger than anything she had seen in the Outer Rim territories. Its hull gleamed with fresh metal and sophisticated technology that rivaled the best Imperial installations. Dozens of ships moved around it in carefully coordinated patterns, some she recognized as human designs but others were completely foreign. "Welcome to humanity's best-kept secret," Captain Minho said, joining her at the window. "This is where we coordinate relief efforts for the entire sector." Administrator Oh Sungmin met them at the docking bay, a middle-aged man with kind eyes and hands stained with machine oil. He embraced Minho like an old friend before turning to greet Kira with the same warmth he showed the human crew members. "Another survivor of Imperial justice?" he asked, studying Kira's crystalline features with interest but no surprise. "Dr. Kira Vex, formerly of the Thalorian Empire," Minho replied. "She discovered something important about the galactic purges before they exiled her." Sungmin's expression grew serious. "Then you need to meet Director BAE immediately. Your timing is perfect, Dr. Vex. We've been gathering evidence about the systematic elimination programs for decades." As they walked through the station corridors, Kira stared in wonder at the diversity around her. Humans worked alongside dozens of different species, many of whom she recognized from her research as supposedly extinct civilizations. The gentle builders moved with their characteristic flowing grace, using living tools that grew in their hands. Crystal singers hummed softly as they worked, their music somehow improving the efficiency of nearby machinery. "How is this possible?" she whispered to Sungmin. "These species were eliminated centuries ago." "Not eliminated," he replied. "Hidden. Rescued. Given new homes where the galactic powers couldn't find them." Director BAE Minjung's office occupied an entire level of the station, with walls covered in star charts, population records, and what looked like centuries of carefully documented evidence. She was a small woman with silver hair and the focused intensity of someone who had spent her life fighting impossible battles. "Dr. Vex," she said, rising from behind a desk covered with data tablets. "Captain Minho tells me you have proof of the systematic purges. May I see it?" Kira handed over her research crystals, watching nervously as Director BAE loaded them into her computer systems. The evidence she had died for in Thalorian space might seem insignificant compared to what these humans had already discovered. Instead, Director BAE's eyes widened as she reviewed the data. "This is extraordinary work, Doctor. You've documented genetic markers that prove artificial intervention in supposedly natural extinctions. We've suspected this for decades but never had the scientific evidence to prove it conclusively." "You knew?" Kira asked, surprised. Director BAE activated a holographic display that filled the room with floating timelines and population charts. "Dr. Vex, let me tell you the real history of humanity's expansion into space. 200 years ago, Earth received what appeared to be a natural disaster. A massive asteroid struck our planet, nearly wiping out human civilization." The display showed images of Earth before and after the impact. The before images revealed a blue-green world teeming with life. The after images showed a scarred planet shrouded in dust clouds and debris. "We lost 3 billion people in the initial impact and the environmental collapse that followed," Director BAE continued. But some of our scientists noticed problems with the official story. The asteroid's trajectory was too perfect, its composition too unusual, its timing too convenient. It wasn't natural, Kira breathed, understanding immediately. The Galactic Concordance decided that humanity was becoming too numerous and too unpredictable. They tried to eliminate us while making it look like an accident. They failed because humans are remarkably difficult to kill completely, and some of us escaped to the outer colonies. Director BAE manipulated the display, showing human settlements scattered across the galaxy's rim. When we reached space in larger numbers, we found others who had faced the same fate. The Moss Singers, supposedly destroyed by civil war. The Deep Swimmers, victims of a convenient plague. The Crystal Builders, eliminated by solar radiation that affected only their world. But you didn't seek revenge, Kira observed. Revenge would have made us like them, Director BAE replied. Instead, we decided to save everyone we could. We developed stealth technology to hide entire systems. We created false sensor readings to make our settlements invisible. We built a network of safe havens where the galaxy's unwanted peoples could live freely. The display showed the full scope of the human operation. Hundreds of hidden colonies, millions of rescued individuals, entire species given new lives far from the reach of galactic civilization. The humans had been building a shadow civilization right under the noses of the powers that had tried to destroy them. This is incredible, Kira said. But how do you support so many people? The logistics alone must be enormous. Administrator Oh Sungmin smiled. That's the beautiful thing about cooperation, Dr. Vex. Every species we rescue brings their own skills and knowledge. The Moss Singers can grow crops in impossible conditions. The Crystal Builders create technology that repairs itself. The Deep Swimmers can extract resources from gas giants that other species can't even approach. We don't just rescue people, Director BAE added. We help them thrive. Every successful colony makes the network stronger. Every saved species adds to our collective knowledge and capabilities. Kira looked around the room at the evidence of humanity's quiet revolution. They had turned their own near-extinction into motivation to save others. They had built something unprecedented in galactic history, a civilization based on inclusion rather than dominance, cooperation rather than competition. What happens when the galactic powers discover what you've built? She asked. Director BAE's expression grew grim. That's a question we'll have to answer soon. Our network is getting too large to hide forever. The attack came without warning on a quiet morning when the artificial sunrise was just beginning to illuminate Haven Station's main corridors. Alarms screamed through every level as the massive Thalorian dreadnought Imperial Vengeance dropped out of hyperspace, followed by 12 smaller warships from the Galactic Concordance fleet. Admiral Kang Taehyun rushed to the command center, still pulling on his uniform jacket as he ran. At 62 years old, he had hoped his fighting days were behind him, but the galaxy had other plans. The main display showed the enemy formation spreading into an attack pattern designed to prevent any ships from escaping. How did they find us? He demanded. Unknown, sir, replied his tactical officer. But they're demanding our immediate surrender and the return of all stolen alien populations. Through the observation windows, Kang could see families loading onto evacuation ships with desperate efficiency. Human children held hands with young Moss Singers while their parents carried whatever belongings they could manage. Crystal Builder technicians worked frantically to download critical data before the station's computers could be captured. Sir, incoming transmission from the Thalorian flagship, his communications officer announced. Put it through. The face that appeared on screen belonged to Fleet Commander Zethvar, a Thalorian military leader known for his ruthless efficiency in elimination campaigns. His crystalline features showed no emotion as he delivered his ultimatum. Human vessels, you are harboring criminals and extinct species that threaten galactic stability. Surrender immediately or face complete destruction. You have 10 minutes to comply. Kang looked around the command center at his mixed crew of humans and refugees from dozens of worlds. These people had built something beautiful in the darkness between stars, and now the old powers wanted to crush it simply because it existed. Send a reply, he ordered. Tell them we declined their generous offer. The Thalorian fleet moved into attack formation with military precision. Kang's forces looked pathetically small in comparison: 3 human destroyers, a handful of converted cargo ships, and a few armed rescue vessels. On paper, it should have been a massacre lasting less than an hour. But the enemy commanders had made a critical mistake. They expected to fight scattered refugees using improvised weapons and desperate tactics. Instead, they faced a unified alliance that had spent decades preparing for exactly this moment. The first surprise came when the Mossinger colony ship Harmony began broadcasting on frequencies that made Thalorian communications equipment malfunction. The gentle beings who communicated through harmonic vibrations had learned to weaponize their natural abilities, creating interference patterns that turned the enemy's coordination advantage into chaos. The second surprise arrived when Crystal Builder engineering teams activated devices they had been installing throughout the human fleet for months. Damaged ships began repairing themselves in real time during combat, hull breaches sealing automatically while weapons systems restored themselves faster than the enemy could disable them. The third surprise came from the deep swimmers, who had modified human torpedo designs with their knowledge of fluid dynamics and pressure systems. Their weapons moved through space in impossible patterns, striking from angles that conventional military doctrine insisted were impossible. But the greatest surprise was something the galactic powers had never encountered before, an enemy that fought not for conquest or revenge, but for the radical idea that every conscious being deserved to exist freely. Kira stood on the bridge of the human flagship Second Dawn, watching the battle unfold while serving as translator and tactical advisor. Her knowledge of Thalorian military procedures proved invaluable as she helped predict enemy movements and identify weaknesses in their formations. "Their command ship is trying to coordinate the attack," she reported to Admiral Kang. "If we can disable their communications array, their formation will lose effectiveness." "Can we get close enough?" Kang asked his weapons officer. "Negative, sir. Too much defensive fire." "I can help," offered Trileco, the Mossinger who had become the ship's unofficial communications specialist. "My people can create a harmonic barrier that will confuse their targeting systems long enough for you to attack." The plan worked perfectly. As Trileco and her fellow Mossingers filled space with their coordinated songs, the human ships slipped through the enemy defensive grid like shadows. The Second Dawn's main guns tore through the Thalorian command ship's communications array, leaving their fleet stumbling in sudden silence. What followed was not a battle but a demonstration of what cooperative warfare could accomplish. Species that had been dismissed as weak or primitive used their unique abilities in combinations that no military academy had ever imagined. The gentle builders turned asteroid debris into guided missiles. Mechanical beings hacked enemy systems from impossible distances. Even the rescued Thalorians contributed their knowledge of Imperial weak points and tactical blind spots. Within 6 hours, the mighty Concordance fleet was retreating in disorder, leaving behind 3 disabled ships and a field full of debris. The survivors limped back toward civilized space carrying news that would shake the foundations of galactic politics. Admiral Kang found Kira in the observation deck after the battle, staring out at the stars where the enemy fleet had vanished into hyperspace. "What happens now?" she asked. "They know about us. They'll be back with larger fleets." Kang joined her at the window, his reflection ghost-like in the transparent metal. "Now we do what we've always done, but openly instead of hiding. We welcome whoever needs welcoming. We help whoever needs help. And we show the galaxy that there's another way to live." "You're not afraid?" Kang smiled, the expression warm despite the battle's aftermath. "Dr. Vex, we've spent 2 centuries proving that the galaxy's discarded peoples are stronger together than apart. Today we proved it to our enemies as well. Let them come with their larger fleets. We'll be ready."